Data privacy laws. As you may now be familiar with, there are various institutions in the United States and in the world today which have been termed the data brokers. These are institutions that essentially work by accumulating data of people, information about people, their actions, their behaviors, and use that as the product that they sell either to advertisers or to political companies or to other commercial entities that may want to know specific information about people. The big daddies of the data brokers is, of course, Google and Facebook. And Google, I think, is the king of them all because Google has so much data on almost every single human being alive, certainly almost all single human beings in the United States, but all around the world as well. And they make their business of using this people's data. And for you to have some understanding on what kind of information they're keeping about people, and this comes from the other sort of more mundane, plain vanilla data brokers, and they say here the 9 companies that know more about you than Google or Facebook, but they probably don't know more about you than Google and Facebook. These are more, I think, but to have some understanding on what these other data brokers company has, what kind of information, let's go over it. So first is general interest data. So your apparel preferences, your charitable giving, whether you gamble or not, if you own pets, your preferred movie genres or music genres, whether you exercise or not. There's financial data. Do you have credit cards? Do you have life insurance? What kind of loans do you have? Do you have vehicle data? What kind of car do you own? Do you have a boat? When did you buy it? What's the vehicle identification numbers? Health data, do you use tobacco or not? Do you have disability insurance? What's your weight loss goals, or supplements? Or court and public record data, of course, that's super easy. Judgments, marriage license, voting registration, and so on. Purchase behavior data, so do you participate in shooting games, or what kind of types of purchases do you do? How much are your purchases? Do you read books or not? Are you an internet shopper? Okay, your home and neighborhood data. Where do you live? Your kind of home you have. How many baths there are? Does your home have a fireplace? Your demographic data, age, height, weight, gender, religion, education, and so on. Travel data. Where do you travel to? Identifying data. Yes, they have your name, and they may have your social security as well, and all the sensitive information. Phone number, email addresses, now and past, your social media data, what kinds of social media you use, are you a heavy user? And you're saying, how can they accumulate all this data? One individual company has all this data, most of these attributes on you, on a large majority of American citizens. And that's their work. Their work is to find out how to get this data, and they get it because data is flowing everywhere on the internet. And there's very little protection for your personal data. Now, the U.S. Constitution, Amendment 4, reads that the right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrants shall issue but upon probable cause, supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized. In other words, you can't just have somebody just going snooping around your persons, houses, papers, or effects, or essentially everything you do, without being explicit about the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized. So you already have to have some idea of what you're looking for, and you have to have a warrant to do that. Now, there is actually, the term privacy does not appear in the U.S. Constitution, so there's no real specific privacy guarantee. But in the US, there are many laws that have been developed related to information privacy and data privacy. So the Electronic Communications Privacy Act of 1986, Children's Privacy, we talked about some of these, Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act. There is a privacy of financial information, quite a number of these. There is the major privacy of medical records, HIPAA, and there's some more miscellaneous records and activities, and that may have something to do with privacy, so video privacy protection, cable communications policy, and others. But essentially no general data privacy law in the United States. And the situation is pretty bad concerning privacy policies of institutions. So there's this report from the New York Times from 2019 about privacy policies and how they were incomprehensible disaster. I recommend you take a look in more detail. I'll go over some of these, but generally, if you were to read them, they take, actually, I didn't think this was fairly long. If it takes something 20 minutes to read, this is not that long for a privacy policy, but the problem is how long does it take for you to comprehend everything? And they make a classification of how hard something is to read, and maybe this graph is a little bit easier to understand. So here is professional career level. So you have to be either a college or professional career to understand any of these privacy policies, which is, I mean, I would have expected that. But, not everybody has a college degree. And actually, I think that probably a lot of college holding people do not fully or even largely understand these privacy policies. There's some also information about things may have changed a little bit after the GDPR, which was enacted, which we'll talk about. But this all goes to show how privacy policies are being dealt with in the United States. Next, we'll talk about general data privacy laws that do exist.